Alright everyone, there's no way that you don't already know the Golden State Killer, one of the notorious old cold cases from many decades ago, was finally solved. They think they've got their guy based on DNA evidence, but the way in which they went about it, I mean, everyone should be happy that there's a serial killer, even though he's geriatric. I think he's like 74. He's Joe Biden's age now, or very close to it. So he's geriatric, but it's good that he'll see justice. It's good that he'll see the inside of a fucking cell for what he did. Apparently he went around and raped and killed literally dozens of people. He's an ex-cop, disgruntled, psychopathic, I guess, and was just all sorts of fucked up. So we should be happy that a serial killer and serial rapist is behind bars, but allegedly. But the way in which the police went about solving the cold case, maybe we shouldn't be quite so happy about that. See, the big problem is genealogy sites are in the crosshairs again of everyone who likes privacy, who, holds the Fourth Amendment dear. What ended up happening is that the police took DNA evidence from the scene and they uploaded it to an ancestry site, which didn't know that they were doing this, by the way. It probably breaches the site's own rules, so there might be some sort of legal battle over that. The genealogy site will be like, hey, you've just ruined our reputation. Nobody's going to use our service because now they're afraid they're going to get arrested or something. They took the DNA and uploaded it to an ancestry site, and then got the profile, and then they could use that for matching. Like, literally, it's like getting the lab to run the DNA against a much larger database, though. Essentially, they can get the identity of the person if there's a match within the ancestry site system. It's like, oh, you've already submitted DNA. What are you doing? Here's the identity involved. This should probably concern us a little bit. Now, as someone who likes my privacy, I've never been 100% aboard with, living with your life on your sleeve when it comes to social media, like Facebook. If you actually think that all of the info that I've ever put on my Facebook page is actually real, I've got some, bridges that I need to sell you, and also some swampland in Florida, and also some desert in the middle of the rainforest. You can buy it all for just give me all of your money, but trust me, dude, you'll be really rich afterwards. I believe in privacy. I happen to believe that other people do not have an inalienable right to know everything that goes on in your fucking life. I happen to believe that applies, yes, even to synths like Zuckerberg. I know he's not human, so it's like he can't really violate your privacy because he's just a programmed thing. But at the same time, Zuckerberg doesn't need all of my info either. Neither does anybody, unless I choose to give them that info. So when these ancestry sites started springing up, I said, oh, well, that's cool. I think there might be a little bit of a problem down the road with this being used to fuck people over in a legal sense, and or hackers get in, then they've got your DNA. Look, here's a big problem. You get a private company with a database like this. What happens if a cartel hires some hackers, gets in there, and then grabs DNA from people from a certain geographic region and begins using technology that, if you got cartel kinds of money, you obviously have access to some scientists. What if they, as DNA technology gets more standardized, probably cheaper over time, or they employ people to build it themselves, couldn't they potentially manufacture evidence? Couldn't they potentially do that if they had the right facility? They can already process, weapons-grade uranium and sell that on the black market. And any state actor that wants to could use that basic technology to kill off dissidents. Oh, this person committed a murder. What? I was nowhere near it. But we found your DNA at the crime scene. We found one of your hairs. We grew it in a lab. Whoops. That could be a little bit of a problem now, folks. Now, couldn't it? We're always worried about, the police should only be able to obtain your DNA with a warrant. And okay, but you give it to private companies freely. Those companies, they can do whatever they want with it. They want to give it all to the police. They work with them openly. Now, that's not a problem if you've got honest police. The problem is, of course, then you get, maybe a corrupt cop who doesn't like you for some reason. You're dating his ex-girlfriend. He's abusive or something. He's like the Golden State Killer. The Golden State Killer was apparently a cop. So, yeah, there you go. So I guess a psychopath was working on a police force and committing crimes at the time, and then thereafter for some time as well. I think that genetic technology in the next 10 to 20 years is going to become a huge problem, to the point where it will almost render itself useless for crime fighting. Because once we get to the point where everything can be falsified, it can no longer be used as evidence. Now, can it? DNA technology that can catch some dude who killed and raped people 20, 30 years ago, well, it won't be much use then, will it? Actually, I think it's closer to 50 years ago now. I think it was back in the 70s and 80s that he was operating. It's, oh, we caught the Zodiac killer, belatedly. If they ever did that, it'd be, he'd be dead by then. The psychological profile of that particular individual probably belies the fact that it wouldn't be the kind of person who would submit DNA willingly to a company. It's be a little bit like maybe Ted Kaczynski doing it. No, I never gave them any of my DNA, nor ever would, because I always thought it was a bad idea, for reasons that now are all too obvious. But it's going to become worse because, again, once it becomes like 3D printing or drones or something, it becomes something that is easily accessible, and it will. Trust me, through the law of supply and demand, DNA tampering will eventually be common. People will be tampering with their DNA. I can guarantee you. It'll be like those little kits they used to give kids where they could play around with a piece of uranium and use like a little mini Geiger counter and stuff. It's going to be exactly the same. Now, it's going to be revolutionary. It's going to be really great. It's going to help with disease. It's going to help with, entertainment will be pretty cool. It'll be funny when you have glow-in-the-dark strippers that don't have to apply glow-in-the-dark paint, I guess. Okay, maybe so. Next time you have a ball pit situation and you want to fill it with strippers, they'll glow in the dark, so it'll be easier to see them when you turn the lights off. That's great. The problem is that it's going to make manufacturing evidence for various reasons very easy. At first, it'll be used to kill off dissidents. It'll be used by the corrupt. Then it will simply fall out of favor entirely because it'll no longer be evidence. It's sort of like hacking, like fingerprints left behind during hacking. There's no longer a certainty that those fingerprints are real. Now, if it's something mundane, it's like, oh, someone broke into my blog spot. Yeah, probably the fingerprints you find are authentic, because the chances of someone employing rogue CIA software to cover up their fingerprints and put somebody else's there is probably not actually true, but it's possible to do. So if it's a high-level incursion, something the average person probably gives a damn about, it's almost like there's no evidence at all. It's like this DNC server that they won't hand over. It doesn't matter if they do find Russian fingerprints on it. It also doesn't matter if they don't. It doesn't matter whose fingerprints they find, because it could have been any state actor, any significant criminal enterprise, any significant political force in the entire world. Could have been. It could have also been a bunch of script kiddies that simply got a hold of that text somehow because they had a rich friend. Oh, here, go cause chaos, guys. You're going to get arrested, but, it'll be funny while it lasts. No, it's DNA technology should scare people. Look, you should be much more scared about the possibility of evidence being manufactured because a cartel or a hacker, you do realize that like the nation of China would like to break into these ancestry sites and get people's data for potential future sale. They'll be willing to, they've got a hyper-capitalistic situation when it comes to certain parts of their economy. I am certain that you could find some Chinese hackers to break into Ancestry.com or fucking whatever it is, grab DNA profiles, the actual DNA itself, and then manufacture it in a lab. I guarantee you that if you paid enough money, you could do that. It'd probably be expensive. Over time, trust me, they'll revolutionize it and make it easy peasy, 1, 2, 3-zy. Do you want 3 or 4 hairs from your ex's head to frame them for a rape or a murder? Go right a fucking head. You got 50 grand? Okay, you can have somebody put in prison for the next 10, 20 years. It's essentially the problem. It's exactly like this rogue software that Snowden told us all got loose. The big problem about it is that it could be used as evidence when it's not evidence of anything. Now, in the cyberspace, it's probably more concerning because, of course, the concept of a physical alibi like I was in another country no longer really applies, because then you could just frame them as having been in that other country and leave your fingerprints on something. With DNA, it's a little bit different, maybe less concerning in some things, but if you're trying to buy falsified DNA, I guarantee at some point this will happen. It'll be used as a defense, too. Come the time when we find out it's happening. It'll also be used as a legal defense by people who actually committed crimes. Oh, I didn't butcher my sister. No, this wasn't me. It was fake. Look, these hairs obviously aren't mine. They were grown in a Chinese lab, some lab in Mexico, and that'll be used as a defense. It'll probably stick. It's going to be a weird fucking time that we're living in. It's dystopian. It really is, but people aren't concerned enough. Governments could easily craft false evidence. Now, you may say, well, it's conspiracy theory. The U.S. government would never do that. Okay, maybe the U.S. government doesn't. What about some other government? What about Maduro down in Venezuela? What about Putin? Oh, do you think that he's special? He wouldn't be one. Would think it was wonderful to be able to do that. Oh, this time we have solid proof. The international community must accept that my opponent here was building a bunch of explosives and attacking my Moscow offices. We've got proof. Look, we found a piece of his hair at the crime scene. He claims he was across the city. Ha-ha, we can prove he was there. Now, of course, again, lab-grown hair or something. A bit of blood that was grown in a lab. It's possible with today's technology. It's not beyond the realm of the pale that some private group might get a hold of this information, and you have willingly supplied it. The biggest funny part is a lot of like white nationalists have conned one another into giving up their DNA to these companies, helpfully building potential criminal profiles about themselves in order to prove that they're white. It's really, really fun. And then we found out one of those sites was like wrongfully marking people as having sub-Saharan African DNA, you know, which they didn't actually have. It was like they were fiddling around with the markers or something. So that got people mad, and it was like just a big shit show. So it's crazy. You got to start thinking about the ramifications of your actions with regards to the violation of your fundamental human rights. I would say that a person's genetic information is pretty private. Normally it's more or less self-contained within the person. It's like if somebody went out and started like swabbing cigarette butts, you'd probably think, at the very least, you'd think that person was totally creepy. And so when the government goes in and says, oh, we'll just take this evidence and upload it to this ancestry site, maybe we'll get a hit. Well, a private company just notified the police of this individual's identity from this cold case. Congrats to them to catching him. It's one less weirdo on the streets, but the methodology opens a can of worms that I don't think we as a society fully comprehend. I think it could be problematic down the road. That's about all. Peace out.